Well, we're testing a new video today, so we're going to see if this camera works out well for me. Hopefully it does. Welcome to Authority. This week we are continuing our series on burnout. And talking about it from last week, burnout doesn't arrive all at once. It isn't really dramatic when it first starts. It kind of trickles in quietly from the background, and we don't necessarily notice it until it becomes an actual emergency. And that really happens, you start feeling it when work becomes no longer fun, no longer pleasant. When you start dreading opening that manuscript you've been super excited about for months, and now we're like, I never want to look at this again. That can also happen sometimes after you've just finished writing one, so that's not necessarily burnout, but it is one of those things. It makes everything feel like a war of attrition. It's not exciting anymore. It's like you're constantly trying to fight to do the thing, and that's exhausting. Like, nobody wants to do that. For writers, a lot of the time, it hits when we think we're doing everything right, when we're on top of our game, when we've been like doing all the marketing and doing all the work, and we're showing up, and we're getting all these words written, and we're publishing books at a good rate, and we're getting all this stuff done. Look at how successful we are, and then the wheels come off the wagon. And that can turn into resentment. It can turn into all kinds of things. And this week we are, like I said, continuing our conversation about burnout and what that is. And this week we're going to talk about how to adapt after you're out of that crisis point. So, here we go. If you're new Here we go. If you're new here, welcome to Authority, where we spill the tea on the publishing industry. I am E. Prabilski. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years. I am a speaker on publishing and writing and editing. I sell books. I wrote the we're gonna talk about this. I wrote the How to Write the Damn Book and How to Publish the Damn Book, and you'd think I'd be able to get my intro right, but today is not that day. So let's get into it. So burnout, what it is once you hit that exhaustion point and you keep going, that's where burnout really starts to show. And we go through that. We do it a lot. It's something that our culture glorifies. And it happens in hustle culture in general, but in writing, in the writing and publishing culture, there's this idea that if you're in writer's block, you just need to keep going. Just keep doing it. It's going to get better every single time. And it doesn't always get better. And the idea that you can just push through or that you are not disciplined enough is a lie. It's one of those lies that burnout tells us and one of those lies that hustle culture tells us. So between those two, lots of lies to go around. And look, a lot of people also kind of wear burnout as a badge of honor. They say, yeah, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I'm still doing all of this. Look how cool I am. And we kind of treat it like it's some kind of moral success, and like taking a break or burning out and just collapsing is some kind of moral failure. And the reality is that morality has nothing to do with burnout. Burnout is just about psychology, it's about physiology, it's about the human brain. It's about all these different things. It's not about your morality. It's not that's a puritanical idea that doesn't actually work. And we want to treat burnout like what it is. It's almost more of a disease than anything. So we should really be looking at burnout as a symptom of, hey, there's something wrong here, and it's not because you're not trying hard enough. I've been dealing with a lot of shame around the fact that I've been gone for a while because I've been in burnout, and that shame is real. And I'm sure other people feel it when they stop showing up and need to take time off to tend to their burnout, which is where I've been. And where I'm at is I'm trying to recreate some kind of reasonable schedule for myself where I can get things done that need doing, and I also give myself the grace that I need in order to function as a human being. Because one of the things that burnout doesn't take into account, and hustle culture often ignores, is that we're adults with lives. We have obligations beyond just work. Some of us have families with kids. Some of us have other obligations. Some of us are part of religious organizations and other things. Your job is not your entire life, and as much as being a writer is a huge part of my identity, it's not everything about me. I do a lot of other stuff too. And all of these things compiled and compounded can result in burnout. And of course, hustle culture tells us to just delete the non essential things, right? The non essentials. Those being anything that brings us joy and feels rewarding a lot of the time. So it's not sustainable, it's not realistic. And how do we bounce back from that? How do we come back out of that place? Last week we talked about when you're in burnout, what do you do? And this week we're going to talk about once you've gotten through that triage stage that I talked about, where you go from there. And a lot of the time, we kind of just expect ourselves after we've rested to just bounce back. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like that. It isn't as clear cut. It isn't as convenient as that is. It's not like just a triumphant return after a brief break. It doesn't really look like that. It looks a lot different, and it can be really disappointing sometimes because we get this idea in our heads that that is what we're supposed to do. And of course that's what we'll do. That's what we've never done. And as an autistic person, I can't tell you the number of times I've hit autistic burnout and just crashed and had that illusion in my head that I'm just going to come back stronger from this, when really it's more like getting surgery, and you do come back from it and you may have fixed the problem, but there's still damage in there and you still have scarring, whether the scarring is physical or mental. Sustainable progress after you're burned out is slower. It's not a triumphant return. It's not super glamorous. It is, in fact, slower. It is more measured. It is less all at once. You have to do things in steps and stages, and you have to start identifying where the burnout came from. Where did this experience happen? Where did the wheels come off my wagon? And that can look like us taking a step back from things. It can mean that maybe we don't post on all social media all the time. Or maybe we cut down on a certain element of our business permanently because we've realized that this is not a sustainable or healthy thing for us to keep doing. And yes, I am in fact reading a script, so if you see me looking off, I'm referring to my notes because I can't hold everything in my brain. I do words, but I don't speak words perfectly all the time. The thing about preventing future burnout is that we have to assess the systems that we created for ourselves that put us in that place. Where did we go wrong, so to speak, right? Where in our systems did we mess things up and put too much on ourselves? Because these systems that we create look manageable in a vacuum, and then when we deploy them, it's one thing on top of another on top of another. Like, yeah, sure, this podcast schedule looks awful realistic until you get sick, or until you have a deadline that you need to meet, or until these other things. Because it seems like, oh, that's just a 15 to 20 minute video. I can crank that out. That's not a big deal, until it is a lot. And we tend to overlook things like the amount of time it takes to set up the camera, figure out the technology. We overlook the type of stuff that, we are adding to these things. There's like these little invisible layers and those little invisible pieces that we are not noticing that we need to do. And then they all creep up on us, and that's where the wheels come off our wagons. So after you've done the triage, you need to start looking at your systems and be like, okay, what was too much? How do I identify that thing that was too much? What was it that really caused me this problem? And keep in mind also that what wasn't too much a month ago might have been too much now. For example, I have a close friend of mine whose husband died last year. And what wasn't too much before his death is absolutely too much now. And she has to adjust and minimize what she's doing in order to keep up with her world and keep up with her life. But she has to figure out what too much looks like. And sometimes too much waxes and wanes depending on the season of life we're in, what we're doing, who we are in that moment, life things that we may or may not have control over. These are all pieces and parts that can help lead to burnout, and it means that we have to reassess our systems more often than we think we do sometimes. You don't need to completely delete your system, whatever your system looks like, in order to handle burnout. What you need to do is just take a good hard look at them, and that's what I'm doing this first quarter of 2026. I have been working really hard on assessing my systems, assessing my client intake structure, assessing how I do editorial letters, assessing what jobs I'm doing in which organizations that I might be able to offload to somebody else and do some delegation in. All of that kind of stuff. Where are those pieces and what can I let go of? And I was due for this a while ago. Anybody who's a longtime listener or viewer of this podcast knows that last year I was in inpatient mental health therapy because the wheels came off the wagon real hard and I was not doing okay. And since then, I've been kind of on this journey to really create and build and develop a sustainable system for myself. And there's been fits and starts. Not everything is perfect. Also, I apologize to anybody who's listening. If you hear hissing in the background, I live in a 300-year-old farmhouse with opinions, and it is heated by steam. And right now, our system is on because it is 26 degrees out right now. It's warmer than it has been, so 26 feels balmy versus the negative 13 it was the other day. But still, the steam heat system has opinions in the background. So, when we're looking at all of our systems, one of the things we want to look at is also when do we respond? If you hit burnout fully and just went to pieces, like I've done, we need to start listening to those warning signs a little better and start identifying those warning signs a little better. And that is a thing that going into burnout can teach you. It can teach you, oh, that's what that little blinking light on the dashboard meant. I should have probably listened to that sooner. That's the kind of stuff that you start picking up when you start really processing the steps that led you to where you are at right now. It doesn't mean that you were wrong or bad. It just means that you weren't where you should have been for that moment. And it means that we can look back and be like, okay, this is where we got into this and this is how we ended up in this place. We can definitely fix this. Recovering, it means identifying those things so we don't end up with them again. Oh, there's my cat. Sultan has opinions today. We need to make space in our systems and in our lives to understand that things don't always go perfectly. Burnout will show up sometimes, or sometimes, like I mentioned, people die, or we get sick, or things happen that are just not ideal and mess up our lives real hard for a bit. Those kinds of things are inevitable. That's just unfortunately how life kind of goes. And what we do when those things happen is we immediately have to pivot our attention to dealing with that. And sometimes that means stripping out all of the excess stuff. So if you have big, complicated systems, you can look at places where, okay, if I'm starting to show burnout signs, these are the things that I drop immediately. These are things that are on my list of things to maybe let go of after. And you can kind of put all that together and identify what you're going to keep, what you're going to let go. That can be super important for your ability to survive and navigate burnout and prevent yourself from entering it all over again. Because in order to be creative, we have to have the energy to be creative, which I know you are feeling down in your bones right now if you're listening to this. And also in today's situation for so many different things, finding the energy for stuff is hard, if not outright impossible sometimes. My cat still has opinions. He must scream, I guess. And navigating those spaces is challenging and identifying, okay, this is where I'm at right now. How do I remove everything I don't need to be doing? It's not as dramatic as when we are in burnout and we need to be like, everything gets put down. All of it, we need to recover. But we can kind of take that vibe of, I'm going to put down what I can't handle right now and apply it to our systems before we hit burnout. So in martial arts, if you end up gassing out completely so that you just can't function and are ruined, like you go to a class and just get absolutely creamed and you're not functional for like a week afterwards, you probably should have stopped sooner. If you hit burnout, that's a sign you probably should have done these things before, which is not in any way to shame you for not having done them before. You didn't know, but now you do. So let's do that. Life after burnout isn't necessarily a big dramatic comeback story where you pick up everything you put down and you just like roar back to the surface and you're like, yeah, everything's good again. Because that attitude might have been, well, what put you in burnout to begin with. It usually looks like fixing the systems that you've created for yourself, fixing your methodology, and fixing the things that put you in this space. And it means if you do those things, also you're going to have a longer career, because your career is going to be looking towards being burnout proof in the future. It's not to say it can't happen ever, but if you look actively at these possibilities and at these systems and are trying to strip out everything that could potentially lead to burnout, you're going to insulate yourself from this occurring again. And obviously, if you're here, you don't want to go through that again. I mean, I don't think anybody does. Burnout's awful, and I don't think anyone wants to keep experiencing it. So dig into those spaces. What can I put down? Or alternatively, when I start seeing these signs, what are the first things I put down? And how do I strip out excess things? I'm going to get into that a little bit deeper next time when I really get into burnout proofing your life. That's the last in this series that I'm going to be recording. And I have some fun My Little Pony references for you, so I'm outed myself as a brony, and I'm not even a little bit apologetic for that, so you can just deal with that fact. I like My Little Pony, and I have since the 1980s, and that is just a fact. There is hope for not entering into burnout over and over again. No matter what society tells us is glamorous and correct, you don't need to keep doing this to yourself. And you don't need to let other people keep doing it to you, because boundaries are a thing. So take some time, evaluate your systems, figure out what you can put up, what you can take down, what you can do and what you can't. You don't have to make any massive changes right now. Just start identifying the spots that you could be like, this is a thing that I could change, and I probably am going to. That's all you got to do right now. Actually changing stuff, you can definitely do that. But if you're just at the point where you're starting to peek your head out, just think. Don't do too much, because if you overdo it, straight back into burnout you go, which is kind of the opposite of what we're going for. Thank you for joining me this week on Authority, where we spill the tea on the publishing industry with heart, humor, and insight that I got the hard way. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with somebody that you think would be beneficial to. Share it with a writer, leave a review, leave me some comments. If you're looking at your systems and you're struggling with them, let me know in the comments. Maybe I can help you a little bit. Or maybe you can help each other. This is a communal space where we can talk about these things and not feel shame about it. Your voice matters. Your story counts. And if you are still wearing pants at this point in today's society, congratulations. That puts you ahead of the curve, because I absolutely am not. Have a great week. I will talk to you next week. We will conclude our series on burnout. This week has been hard for me. I am exhausted. Not bad, but it's been a long week because I've been flirting with the edge of a cold, and I'm stepping into church leadership in ways that I had never expected to, and that's been a lot. I'm hoping that I can use all of this challenge as a way to, again, reevaluate the systems I was talking about, because I've been putting things down pretty aggressively, and I'm going to be putting more things down. Not this, I promise, the podcast is staying, but I've been trying to find ways that I can set things down and not carry as much and let other people carry more. And I'm hoping that that is something I can continue into the future, because I'm waiting on an acceptance letter from college for March. We'll see if I get accepted, but I'm waiting on that letter. And if I get accepted into college, I'm going to have to put a whole lot of things down, because college is kind of everything. And I'd be having to commute a distance to college, because this has to be in person. So I'm really doing the learning right now of what I can do and how to delegate and who I can delegate to, and teaching people how to take over for when I can't do things. I'm hoping that that prevents me from fall down, go boom again. So I will see you next week, and I hope you have a great week. Stay safe out there. The world is a lot right now. Take care, friends.